Well, I think this is one critically important concept, and it's getting ahead of steam on a global scale, and that is to allow communities to set a date. And if your birth date is prior to that date, then you can't purchase. So it basically cuts off the pipeline of new smokers. That's the concept, and it's a concept that has gotten a lot of traction. It's not the only concept, but it is a very popular one. But I do think it's important for we now have, I think, 380 organizations have signed on to the concept of a smoke-free generation and an end game, that it's important as a society for us to figure out where will this all end, because you spend all of your time, many of you, dealing with the health sequelae of tobacco use. And yet, as you are doing that, unfortunately, and the back end, more and more individuals are coming through that pipeline and developing those illnesses and others. So it is the leading cause of preventable death on a global scale. Yeah. And the more that we can have, as Ang says, an army to combat it, the greater the probability that we will be successful in doing so.
Yeah, great. I like your ideas, because I just joined a think tank on including prevention of lung cancer, and smoking prevention is the most powerful one. And I like the idea of the end game. Do you have an overview over the world? Which countries or which governments have been perceptive to the end game, and which country has introduced the end game in their legislation so far? So setting up, increasing the age for smoking, and what kind of resistance do you have to be prepared for it?
Okay, thank you for the question. So if you follow the endgame literature, in fact, New Zealand is probably the most prominent country that have went along the tobacco-free generation endgame. In fact, they had gotten it passed in the previous government. And the whole world and the tobacco control experts were writing to New Zealand to continue with it. But unfortunately, when there was a change in government, they rescinded. Those of you who are from UK, you might recall Rishi Sunak has also mentioned about it. Guernsey was one district in UK who also voiced for it. And Malaysia health minister has wanted to push for it. So I think more and more people are beginning to understand the benefit, but they don't know the deeper narratives. And when you don't know the deeper narratives, you can't defend it. So that's why it's so important then for us to reach out to young people so that we can get them to talk about the narratives.
Maybe the second question, maybe important for this audience too, is do you include the e-cigarettes in there as well? Because if you have the UK, they claim that maybe e-cigarettes could be a good supplement for quitting smoking. And you hear these things and I'm shocked. So is the e-cigarette topic included in the end game?
Yes. So in this approach, it distills down that it is the industry that produces the e-cigarette and the smoking. So it becomes clear then to the young people that it's the industry behind. And the credit then needs to really go to work from Cheryl when she was in Legacy, what do you call it? Yeah, the foundation. So they were the one who proven conclusively that if you bring up the tobacco industry to the young people, they can understand more and they have a greater, longer duration of staying away from nicotine addiction. So how to answer Claudia's question, here's how I vision Agile conference could be in the future. You could run concurrent meetings where we have experts like you all continue to pursue the early diagnosis and treatment for lung cancer. But concurrently, you bring in local youth so that they can see the tobacco-free generation endgame concept. We can then teach them the details of it, and they at the same time could well be the group of people who mobilizes the public, who mobilizes the press to talk about tobacco-free generation endgame. And with the media and with the press involved, naturally the politicians will come on board. That has been one of our key work, because when you involve 3,000 young people or 5,000 young people having an event, we organize flash mobs, we organize cycling events. And if you look at Philippines, they will even have a tobacco-free generation football competition named after that. So with all this public manifestation, it spins the entire tobacco control approach from one that is negative to one that is positive, society mobilizing and being very inclusive. So that's how I envision the conference can be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
I just add a few words that recently there is a paper studying, analyzing which country will near to the end game. I forgot the reference, but in general it says that the end game will happen first in high-income country. In countries have fully implemented the FCTC, and they use the figure of 14% preference as a point that if your country smoking preference below 14%, you are near the end game. If you continue to that trend, if I do not forget, I will send that paper to you.
Yes, that would be helpful.
And then for Thailand, even if we reach the end game, in general, now the end game is that the smoking preference 5% or below. 5% below does not mean that completely no smoking. Okay, 5% below. Why 5% it is? 5% is the level that the loss of the society is manageable. Okay. Now, in Thailand, with a population of near 70 million, if we reach the end game 5%, we still have 3 million smokers. 3 million smokers mean that we still have 1.5 million deaths from disease caused by smoking, at least. Okay. So yeah, this is, I have not joined the end game because we have not reached the state that we had the whole government approach to control smoking in Thailand. We have tobacco farmer is opposing the policy. And also we have, the government still own the tobacco monopoly. Okay. But
An enormous political power.
Yeah.
Political power that's beyond anything.
Yeah.
You
So they
might
oppose
imagine.
tobacco control. So that's the difficult part. But they are losing. And I predict that in the not very long future, they will run the business that cannot run anymore. They cannot compete with the transnational tobacco company.
Let us pray.
Let me just say that the end game is not impossible. For those of you who have been fighting lung cancer for decades, we kind of think people will always be smoking, right? But let me just also raise this particular point that we, as the global community, have phased out CFCs, we've phased out leaded fuel, and it took 20 years, okay? 20 years is a short time in history to have phased out leaded fuel. And we know that leaded fuel is much more useful than tobacco. Why can't we phase out tobacco in 20 years or less? I think that's a question we need to be posing to society as a whole. Maybe some of you will have presidents or prime ministers as your patients. That's a question for them, right?
I think it's time because
Just last third point that from my following of all the literature on e-cigarette, I predict that the lung cancer will not be less prevalent than from the cigarette smoking, because up until now, all the evidence is the same. The damaged DNA, the cellular chain, it is the same. You cannot separate between e-cigarette and conventional cigarette as well as oncogenesis. So it will come because on mice, 40 mice exposed to e-cigarette for 1 year, 9 out of 40 get lung cancer already. 9 out of 40. That's 22.5%. And then 23 out of 40 develop the epithelial hyperplasia of the bladder, which could lead to cancer in the future. So e-cigarette will not reduce, now already concluded, it will not reduce the cardiovascular and pulmonary effect disease compared to smoking, but lung cancer will take longer time because you have to remember that the cigarette was popular First World War, 1920, but it took another 40 years before the Surgeon General accepted that smoking is caused lung cancer. So e-cigarette epidemic is about 10 to 15 years only. So we cannot conclude that the e-cigarette is less harmful than the tobacco.
It's true. Thank you all. You've been wonderful.